everything. One day and realizing that the biggest thing standing between you and the life you dream of is not your income, your background, or your opportunities. It's your mindset, your habits, everything, and the courage to rewrite your story. This audiobook is your turning point, a guide not just to earning more, but to becoming the kind of person who attracts abundance, everything, manages it with discipline, and multiplies it with intention. If you're ready to break the cycle, build real wealth, everything, and transform your identity from someone who's surviving to someone who's thriving, this journey starts right now. Everything. There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize that the story they've been living is far smaller than the story they're capable of writing. Everything. A moment when the old identity, the old beliefs, the old excuses suddenly feel too tight, like clothes you've outgrown but kept wearing out of habit. For many people, everything, that moment arrives in silence. No dramatic event, no life-altering crisis, just a quiet realization: I can't keep living like this. Everything. And if you've ever felt that, if you've ever looked at your bank account, your patterns, your decisions, and thought, everything, something has to change, then this chapter is your doorway to a completely different life. Because wealth rarely starts with money. It starts with identity, everything, with who you believe you are, what you believe you deserve, and the limits you quietly set on yourself without even realizing it. Long before someone becomes financially free, everything, they become mentally free. They stop thinking like a broke person, not in the sense of income, but in the sense of habit, fear, and scarcity, everything. They shed an internal identity that held them down like invisible chains, and they step into a new one, an identity built on growth, discipline, and possibility, everything. Everything else begins from there. Think for a moment about the times you've held yourself back. Maybe you wanted to learn a new skill, but told yourself you didn't have the talent, everything. Maybe you wanted to start a side hustle, but convinced yourself you didn't have the time. Maybe you thought about investing, but whispered, everything. That's for people who already have money. These thoughts sound innocent, but they shape your entire financial destiny. They're not just thoughts, everything. They're the beliefs that keep you broke, the identity that keeps you stuck, the quiet story you tell yourself about what you can and cannot become, everything. Imagine two people with the exact same income, the exact same opportunities. One of them sees money as something scarce, fragile, unpredictable, everything. They spend impulsively because they're stressed. They procrastinate because they're overwhelmed, and deep down, everything. They don't believe they'll ever be wealthy, so they behave in ways that reinforce that belief. The other person sees money as a tool, not an enemy. They plan, they think long-term, everything. They grow their skills, they invest early, and because they believe they are capable of building wealth, they behave like someone who will. 10 years later, everything. Their lives look completely different. Not because of income, not because of luck, but because of identity. Every wealthy person you admire started with that same internal shift, everything. They decided to think differently, act differently, and expect more from themselves. And that decision didn't require more money, it required more awareness, everything. It required the courage to outgrow the old self. Think about someone who stays broke because they've accepted the belief that life is unfair. They blame the economy, the government, everything. Their upbringing, their boss. And while all those things can shape circumstances, they don't have to define destiny. A person who believes they have no control will never take control, everything. And so their financial life becomes a constant cycle of frustration and stagnation, not because they're not capable, but because they don't believe they are, everything. Now think about someone who grew up poor but refused to live poor. They decided early on that their background would not be their future. They read, they experimented, they failed, everything. They tried again, they made ordinary decisions, small daily choices that compounded over time, and eventually, everything. Their identity shifted from someone who hopes to make money to someone who creates wealth. That identity powered every action that followed, everything. This chapter is about creating that shift in you. You start by looking honestly at the beliefs that shaped your financial life. The beliefs you absorbed from childhood, from society, everything, from the people around you. Maybe you were taught that money is dangerous or complicated or evil. Everything. Maybe you heard things like, rich people are greedy, money changes you, or people like us don't become wealthy. These phrases might sound harmless, everything. But if they live in your subconscious for years, they quietly sabotage your relationship with money. They make you feel guilty when you earn more. They make you uncomfortable with success. Everything. They make you reject opportunities without even realizing why. To change your financial life, you must challenge these inherited beliefs. You must question them with courage and honesty. Everything. Ask yourself, where did this belief come from? Who taught me this? And is their financial life something I want to model? Everything. You may realize that the people who shaped your beliefs about money were struggling themselves, doing the best they could with what they knew. But you're not bound to their story. Everything. You're free to write your own. Now imagine waking up tomorrow with a different identity. Instead of telling yourself, I'm not good with money, imagine saying, everything. I'm learning to master money. Instead of saying, I can't afford that, imagine saying, how can I afford it? Instead of thinking, everything. I don't know how. Imagine thinking, I can figure this out. These small shifts change everything. They upgrade the way you see yourself, and as a result, the way you act. Everything. Let's bring this to life with a simple example. Picture someone who decides they want to improve their finances. They watch videos, they get inspired. Everything. But their identity is still rooted in scarcity. So when their paycheck comes in, they don't plan, they don't save, they don't invest. Because in their mind, money disappears anyway. Everything. They spend emotionally because they feel powerless. And when the month ends, they're right back where they started. They aren't stuck because they're incapable. Everything. They're stuck because they're living with an identity that expects failure. Now picture someone with the exact same paycheck, but a new identity. Everything. Someone who sees themselves as capable and responsible. They look at their income and say, even if the amount is small, I can manage it well. They set aside a portion for saving. Everything. Another for investing, and another for learning new skills. They read one financial book. They start one small side project. They make one disciplined decision after another. Everything. It's not dramatic. It's not glamorous, but it's powerful. And it begins with identity. The moment you see yourself as someone who can grow, someone who can learn. Everything. Someone who can build wealth, even slowly, you begin to act in ways that bring that reality to life. You start managing your emotions around money. You stop running from challenges. Everything. You stop shrinking yourself to fit old stories. You start showing up differently. You choose long-term thinking over short-term comfort, and with each step, everything. The old version of you fades a little more, replaced by someone stronger, wiser, and more intentional. But identity isn't just about beliefs, it's about standards. Broke thinking says, everything. As long as I survive, I'm fine. Wealth thinking says, I raise my standards because I deserve more. It means choosing discipline over impulse. Choosing growth over excuses. Everything. Choosing self-respect over self-sabotage. When you shift your standards, your habits follow. And when your habits change, your life changes. Everything. There may be moments when this shift feels uncomfortable, even unnatural. That's normal. Growth always feels unfamiliar. You're stepping out of an identity you've lived with for years, everything, maybe even decades. But every time you push through that discomfort, you strengthen the new identity you're building. You prove to yourself that you're capable of more. And one day, everything, without realizing it, you wake up and your old identity no longer fits. You notice that you think differently, act differently, choose differently. You don't chase quick fixes anymore. Everything. You don't blame circumstances anymore. You don't see yourself as a victim anymore. You see yourself as someone who builds, someone who grows. Everything. Someone who can create a life far bigger than anything you've known. That shift, internal, invisible, powerful, is the foundation of wealth. And when that shift happens, everything else becomes possible. You start learning skills you once avoided. You start saving money you once wasted. You start investing in opportunities you once feared. Everything. You start planning your future with confidence instead of anxiety. You start respecting yourself in ways you never have before. Because you finally understand the truth. Everything. Wealth was never out of reach. It was only waiting for you to become the person capable of holding it. And now, you're becoming that person. If you'd like everything, I can now expand the next chapter as well. Money mastery begins in a place most people overlook. Not in a higher paycheck, not in a new job. Everything. Not in some magical investment that promises overnight riches. It begins in the quiet, honest space where you take a hard look at what's already in your hands. Everything. Because before you can grow your money, you have to learn how to hold on to it. You have to understand it, respect it, and direct it. Everything. And that shift, This inner decision to take control has changed more lives than any sudden financial windfall ever could. Think about this for a moment. Everything. How many times have you told yourself that everything would be easier if you just earned a little more? 5% more, 10% more, maybe double. Everything. But here's the truth very few people want to face. Earning more doesn't matter if you don't know how to manage what you already have. You can increase your income again and again, everything. But if your habits stay the same, your life won't. It's like pouring water into a bucket full of holes. No matter how fast you fill it, it will always be empty, everything. So the goal isn't to fill the bucket faster. It's to seal the leaks, strengthen the structure, and take full ownership of how it works. And that is where real financial freedom begins. Everything. I want you to imagine someone you probably know. Maybe it's a friend, a coworker, or even a family member. They got a raise last year, a big one. Suddenly they were excited, everything, telling everyone how things would finally change. Maybe they'd pay off their debt, save more, treat themselves to something nice. But what happened? A few months later, nothing looked different. In fact, sometimes things got worse. The bills grew. The spending grew, the stress grew, their income changed, but their relationship with money didn't. Everything. And because of that, their future didn't either. Now imagine someone else, someone who didn't earn more, didn't get a raise, didn't start a business. Nothing changed on the outside. Everything. Yet somehow, their savings grew, their debt shrank, their life slowly but steadily improved. Why? Because instead of waiting for more money to magically solve their problems, they decided to master what they already had. They took control of their cash flow, they tracked where every dollar went, and they built the discipline most people avoid. Everything. That's the difference between people who grow wealthy and people who stay stuck. It isn't income, it's intention. Everything. Money mastery begins the moment you stop viewing money as something that happens to you and start seeing it as something you direct. Every dollar in your life has a job. Everything. And if you don't assign it one, it will find one on its own. Usually in the form of impulse spending, convenience purchases, emotional decisions, and habits you're barely aware of. Everything. Think back to your last month. Every coffee, every snack, every ride, every last-minute online purchase. They hide in the shadows of your routine, quietly draining your potential. Everything. These are the financial leaks that keep you from building the life you want. Not because they're wrong, but because they're unconscious. You can't fix what you don't see. Everything. That's why tracking is so powerful. When you track your spending, you shine a light on every habit, every pattern, every emotion that influences your financial life. Everything. It's not about judgment. It's about awareness. It's about looking at your past month like a map of decisions and realizing you have far more control than you ever thought. Everything. Some people resist tracking because they feel overwhelmed. Others avoid it because they're afraid of what they'll find. But here's something important. Everything. Money doesn't respond to avoidance. It responds to attention. And the moment you give it that attention, even just a little, it begins to behave differently. Start simple. Everything. Open your banking app. Look at the last 30 days. As you scroll, something will happen. You'll notice patterns you weren't aware of. Maybe it's food deliveries. Everything. Maybe it's subscription services. Maybe it's transportation. Maybe it's small, daily purchases that felt insignificant at the time. But when you combine them, everything. You're suddenly looking at a powerful truth. The little things weren't little. They were shaping your financial life without your permission. Everything. And that realization, far from discouraging, is empowering. Because once you see the problem, you can fix it. Now, let me share a story. There was a man named Arif. Everything. Someone who had struggled with money his entire life, not because he was lazy, not because he lacked talent, but because he never paid attention to the flow of his money. He worked hard, everything, earned decently, but lived paycheck to paycheck. One day, a mentor asked him a simple question: "Where did your last $100 go?" Arif didn't know. Not even close. He shrugged, everything, laughed nervously, and said, "I guess life happened." His mentor smiled and replied, "Life didn't happen. Your habits did." That single sentence changed everything for him. Everything. Arif began tracking his spending, not perfectly, but consistently. And for the first time, he saw the truth staring back at him. Everything. He realized he was spending more on convenience than on purpose. He realized emotional purchases were draining him more than bills were. Everything. He realized small leaks had been costing him thousands over the years. And once he saw it, he fixed it slowly. steadily, intentionally. It didn't solve everything overnight, everything. But it shifted his identity. He stopped being someone money controlled and became someone who controlled money. That's the shift this chapter is about. Once you've tracked your spending, everything, the next step is budgeting. And I want to remove the fear from that word. Budgeting isn't restriction. It isn't punishment. It isn't about saying no to everything you enjoy. Everything. Budgeting is simply telling your money where to go before it disappears. It's a plan, a structure, a roadmap. Wealthy people follow budgets not because they have to, everything, but because they understand that direction creates freedom. Think of your money like a team of workers. If you don't give them jobs, they wander around aimlessly, everything, doing whatever they feel like. But when you assign them roles, this amount for bills, this amount for saving, this amount for investing, everything, this amount for enjoyment, they start working for you instead of against you. Budgeting gives you clarity. It gives you confidence. It lets you breathe, everything. It takes away the constant fear of, will I have enough? Because now you know exactly how your money moves, and you don't need a complicated system. Start with the basics, everything. List your income, list your necessities, list your goals, and then assign every dollar a purpose, even if that purpose is something enjoyable, everything. Because enjoyment isn't the enemy of financial success. Mindless spending is. Once you understand your spending and create a budget, the next step is reducing financial leaks, everything. These are the habits and patterns that drain you without giving anything meaningful in return. Maybe it's eating out too often. Maybe it's unused subscriptions, everything. Maybe it's impulsive purchases driven by boredom or stress. You don't need to eliminate everything. You just need to reduce the leaks enough to regain control, everything. One of the most powerful mental shifts you can make is asking a simple question before every purchase. Is this helping me build the life I want? Not everything. Can I afford it? Because most people can afford things that keep them broke. The real question is whether the purchase moves you closer to your goals or further from them, everything. And what's beautiful is that once you start asking this question regularly, something changes inside you. You begin to see money not as a source of stress, but as a tool, everything. A tool you can sharpen, a tool you can direct, a tool you can grow. Then comes discipline, the part most people run from, the part that separates the dreamers from the achievers, everything. Discipline isn't about being perfect, it's about being consistent. It's about making decisions today that your future self will thank you for, everything. It's about choosing long-term peace over short-term pleasure. And here's the secret: discipline becomes easier when you attach it to a purpose. If saving feels hard, everything. Connect it to the freedom you want. If budgeting feels annoying, connect it to the future you're building. If tracking feels tedious, connect it to the pride of knowing you're in control, everything. Purpose turns effort into empowerment. Money mastery is not about deprivation, it's about elevation, everything. It's about rising above the chaos of financial stress and stepping into a life where your choices are intentional, your habits are aligned, everything. And your future is shaped by design rather than by accident. You are capable of far more financial control than you've ever allowed yourself to believe, everything. And once you take the first step, just one step, you will feel it. That sense of power, that sense of clarity, that quiet confidence that whispers, everything. I am in charge now. And the truth is, you are. Imagine standing at the edge of your potential, looking out at a world filled with opportunities that you were once too overwhelmed, everything, too underprepared or too doubtful to even notice. For most people, everything. The journey from financial struggle to financial strength doesn't begin with a sudden stroke of luck or a dramatic external change. It begins with a skill, a decision, everything, a spark. The moment they realize they can create value. And when you can create value, you can create income. When you can create income, you can create options. And when you have options, everything. You begin to build a life that feels less like survival and more like freedom. The truth is, wealth accelerates the moment you increase your earning potential. If you've ever felt stuck, everything, trapped in the same paycheck month after month, the same routine, the same limited opportunities, the shift you're looking for starts inside you, everything. It starts by understanding that your ability to earn is not fixed. It grows with every new skill you learn, with every strategy you refine, everything, with every chance you take to open another stream of income. And the moment you start seeing yourself as someone capable of growth, someone who can learn, adapt, and build, everything, the world around you begins to shift. Think of someone who feels broke, Not just financially, but mentally. They believe their income is controlled by external forces, the job market, everything, the economy, their boss, their background. But someone on the path to wealth understands a different truth. They know that income is not something you wait for. It's something you build, everything. Every wealthy person you admire didn't just get lucky. They built an income engine. A set of skills, systems, and streams that allow money to flow toward them because they create everything, contribute, and execute at a higher level than before. Most people underestimate what a single skill can do for their life. They think big changes require big ideas, big risks, everything, or big breakthroughs. But sometimes the most life-changing shift comes from learning one new thing deeply. Imagine someone who works a basic job, earning just enough to get by. Everything. They decide to learn graphic design or copywriting or video editing or coding, not because they expect instant wealth, but because they understand that skills stack everything, and stacked skills increase value. Within months, they're experimenting with freelance projects. Their first few attempts might be awkward, imperfect, even unpaid, everything. But then they complete their first paid project. That's when everything changes. Not because the money is big, but because the belief becomes real. Everything. They now have proof that they can increase their earning potential. They now have a skill that no one can take away. Everything. Think about how different your life could be 1 year from now if you committed to learning one high-value skill. Maybe it's communication, the ability to persuade, negotiate, everything, and sell ideas. Maybe it's a technical skill, designing websites, analyzing data, trading professionally, or mastering digital marketing. Everything. Maybe it's a creative skill, producing short videos, writing compelling content, or developing products. Whatever it is, understand this. Everything. The skill you develop becomes the engine that generates income, and that engine grows the more you fuel it with practice, discipline, and intention. And once you have one skill, everything, you begin to build your earning strategy, the blueprint for how you'll use your skills to create multiple income streams. Most people rely on one stream of income, everything, and that's why they feel financially vulnerable. One job, one paycheck, one source of security. But wealthy people build networks of income, not just a single path. Everything. They don't depend on one employer, one client, or one opportunity. They distribute their value across multiple channels, so even if one slows down, the others continue to grow. Everything. But this doesn't happen overnight. It happens through incremental actions. It starts with small side hustles. Everything. Real ones, not the hype-driven, get-rich, quick fantasies that the internet loves to promote, but meaningful, skill-based, value-based side hustles that expand your earning capacity. Everything. For example, imagine someone who learns video editing. They start by offering to edit short clips for small creators. It pays modestly at first, but the portfolio grows. Everything. Then bigger creators reach out. Then local businesses. Before long, something that started as a small side hustle becomes a legitimate, consistent income stream. Everything. Or someone who learns copywriting. They start writing product descriptions, social media captions, simple emails. Then they move into website copy, brand storytelling, everything high, converting ad scripts. They build a reputation. They raise their rates. They start turning down projects because demand is higher than supply. Every step of the way. Everything. Their income engine becomes stronger, more polished, more reliable. The magic of side hustles is not just the extra money, although that can be life-changing. Everything. The real magic is the transformation that happens inside you. Everything. You stop seeing yourself as someone dependent on circumstances and begin to see yourself as someone who creates their own opportunities. Everything. You start to realize that your earning potential expands every time you decide to build instead of wait, to learn instead of complain, to explore instead of shrink. Everything. Creating opportunities is a mindset. It means refusing to wait for permission, refusing to wait for perfect timing, refusing to wait for someone to hand you a better life. Everything. It means understanding that opportunities rarely come to those who sit still. They come to the people who move, who experiment, who show up, even when they're uncertain. Everything. When you take action, doors open. When you hesitate, doors stay shut. And yes, there will be moments when you feel like you're swimming against the tide. Everything. You'll have days where you question whether the effort is even worth it. You'll try something new and fail. You'll offer a service and get rejected. Everything. You'll attempt a project and feel like you're not good enough. But remember this, every skill has a learning curve. Every hustler has a beginning. Everything. Every master was once a beginner who decided not to quit. Everything. The only difference between the broke version of you and the wealthy version of you is the number of times you choose to rise after falling, to learn after failing, everything, to improve when others give up. Let me give you a simple but powerful truth. Wealthy people are not necessarily more talented. They are more persistent. Everything. They don't stop at the first obstacle. They push through the awkward phase of learning. They embrace discomfort because they understand that discomfort is the doorway to growth. Everything. And every new skill you acquire multiplies your ability to earn. That's why some people seem unstoppable. It's not because they have more advantages. Everything. It's because they never stop developing themselves. Think about the people who went from broke to thriving. You'll notice a pattern. They didn't wait to be chosen. They chose themselves. Everything. They didn't wait to be hired. They learned how to serve. They didn't wait for a perfect business idea. They started with whatever they could do today. And then they built from there. Everything. One skill, one opportunity, one income stream. Over time, it compounds. One of the most profound shifts you can make is understanding that money rewards momentum. Everything. The moment you start taking consistent action, even small action, you begin to create momentum that attracts more opportunities. Everything. A freelancer who completes one project gets referred to another. A creator who posts regularly grows an audience. A consultant who helps one business gets recommended to 5 more. Everything. Momentum compounds just like money does. And as your income engine starts to run, something else happens. Your confidence grows. You begin to see yourself differently. Everything. You no longer feel powerless in the financial world. Instead, you feel capable, adaptable, resourceful. You begin to understand that even if everything were taken from you, everything, your skills would allow you to rebuild. That is true wealth. Not the money in your account, but the abilities in your mind and the courage in your heart. Everything. You might be listening to this and thinking, but where do I start? Start with curiosity. Start with something that excites you. Everything. Something you're willing to get bad at before you get good. Start with learning. Everything. The internet has made it possible to acquire high-income skills faster and cheaper than at any point in history. You can learn graphic design from tutorials. Everything. You can learn coding from free courses. You can learn marketing from books and videos. You can learn communication by practicing every day. The tools are there. The knowledge is there. Everything. The opportunity is there. What's missing for most people is the decision to begin. And once you begin, don't start with unrealistic expectations. Start small. Everything. Offer your skill to someone for free to gain experience. Charge a low rate at first, not because your work is cheap, but because your confidence needs time to grow. Build a portfolio. Everything. Build a reputation. Then gradually increase your prices as your expertise rises. This is how you turn a beginner's skill into a powerful income stream. As your streams grow, everything, you'll start to feel something shift in your life. There will come a moment, and it will be a quiet moment, when you realize you no longer fear the future the way you once did. Everything. Because now you have skills, you have options, you have multiple ways to earn. You have the ability to create income on demand. Everything. And that feeling is one of the greatest freedoms a human being can experience. You are not limited by where you come from. Everything. You are limited only by the skills you're willing to learn and the courage you're willing to show. You have far more potential than you've ever been told. Everything. The world may not hand you opportunities, but you can create them. Your income engine is not something you find. It's something you build piece by piece, skill by skill, everything, decision by decision. And in the process of building it, you will discover something powerful about yourself, that you are capable of far more than you ever believed. Imagine, for a moment, everything, that your money is no longer something you chase, worry about, or constantly try to stretch. Instead, imagine it behaving like a loyal worker, quiet, consistent, everything, and reliable, earning for you even when you're asleep, even when you're on vacation, even when life gets busy and unpredictable. Everything. This chapter is about stepping into that version of your life, a life where your money doesn't just sit in a bank account, shrinking from inflation. Everything. But grows and multiplies because you learned how to put it to work. And the beautiful thing is, you don't need to be a genius, come from wealth, or have a finance degree. Everything. You simply need clarity, patience, and the courage to start. Most people never become wealthy because they only understand one relationship with money: work for it, spend it, repeat. Everything. They trade their time for dollars, their energy for paychecks, and their dreams for survival. But the people who build real wealth, the kind that lasts, play a different game. Everything. They understand that money has a job to do. They understand that a single dollar can become 10, 100, 1,000 if you treat it right. They understand the quiet power of compounding. Everything. Of ownership, of planting financial seeds that take root and grow into something far bigger than the effort it took to sow them. Picture someone you know who seems financially comfortable. Everything. Even though they don't seem to work harder than anyone else, they're not necessarily smarter, faster, or luckier. They simply understand something most people don't. Everything. That investing isn't about timing the market, predicting the future, or gambling. It's about owning small pieces of businesses, assets, and opportunities that grow over time. Everything. It's about letting value accumulate quietly in the background while you live your life. Everything. When people say, "Make your money work for you," this is what they mean. Your dollars become little employees, each one contributing to a future you're building on purpose. Everything. Let's slow down and imagine the journey of a single dollar. If you spend it, it disappears forever. If you save it in a basic bank account, it might grow a tiny bit. Everything. Barely enough to keep up with rising prices. But if you invest it in something that grows, like a stock, a piece of real estate, everything, or a business, that $1 begins a journey of multiplication. That dollar earns a little. Then the earnings earn. Then the earnings of the earnings earn. Over years, everything. This process becomes a quiet financial snowball rolling down a hill, gathering more and more without needing you to push it every day. This is compounding. It's simple, everything. But it's not easy because it requires patience, something most people struggle with in a world obsessed with instant gratification. Think about planting a tree. On day one, everything. You see almost nothing. A small seed, maybe a tiny sprout, but give it time, water it, protect it, be consistent, and that same seed becomes something strong, towering, providing shade. Everything. Fruit and benefits far greater than the effort it took to plant it. Investing works the same way. The earlier you start planting, the more shade you'll enjoy later. Even if you start late, everything. The right seed can still grow something meaningful. Every investment is a seed, and your future self will thank you for every one you plant. Everything. Let's talk about the most accessible place where your money can begin its journey, the stock market. People often think the stock market is unpredictable, risky, or only for experts. Everything. But the truth is, owning stocks simply means owning a small piece of a company. When that company grows, becomes more profitable, or gains value, so does your share. Over many decades, everything. Despite short-term ups and downs, the stock market has historically moved upward. Not in a straight line, but like a mountain range, peaks and valleys, but always trending higher over time. Everything. Imagine owning just a small slice of the companies you already interact with every day. The phone you use, the clothes you wear, everything. The groceries you buy. Behind each of these products is a massive corporation generating revenue, expanding, innovating, and growing. When you invest, you're no longer just a consumer. Everything. You become a part owner, and owning is how wealth is built. The wealthy don't get rich by saving every penny. They get rich by owning things that grow in value. Businesses, shares, assets, everything. When you shift from just earning and spending to earning, saving, and owning, everything changes. But maybe stocks feel too abstract, so let's ground it in a simple story. Everything. Imagine a young man named Amir. He works an ordinary job, earning an ordinary salary. But while most of his friends chase quick thrills, buy new gadgets, or spend impulsively, everything, Amir decides to invest $200 every month into a broad stock index fund. Nothing complex, just a basket of companies that represents the whole market. He doesn't check it every day. Everything. He doesn't panic when prices drop, and he doesn't try to be clever. He just invests consistently, month after month. 10 years go by, and something remarkable happens. Everything. Amir didn't work harder than anyone else. He didn't get a lucky break. He simply planted seeds, and his money, quietly and faithfully, began to grow. 20 years later, everything. Those small monthly investments become a powerful financial foundation. 30 years later, they become life-changing wealth, all because he chose ownership over instant gratification. Now, everything. Let's shift to another powerful way money multiplies: real estate. While not accessible to everyone at the beginning, real estate is one of the oldest, everything, most proven wealth-building tools on earth. When you own property, you own something that can appreciate in value while also generating income. Imagine buying a small apartment, everything, renting it out, and letting the tenant's rent cover the mortgage. Over time, the property increases in value, the debt decreases, and the cash flow grows. everything. This is the power of an asset that pays you in multiple ways: value growth, monthly income, and long-term security. Even if you can't buy property right now, everything. Understanding this game prepares you for when the opportunity comes. Think of someone who bought a modest home 20 years ago. Not luxurious, not expensive, just a simple home. Back then, everything. It might have felt like a stretch, maybe even uncomfortable. But today, that home is worth 2 or 3 times more. Not because they worked harder, but because time rewarded ownership. Everything. The market rewarded patience. Real estate isn't just shelter. It's a tool for building stability and wealth, slowly and steadily. Everything. And then there's business, the most powerful wealth generator in human history. You don't need to build the next global empire. Everything, even a small side business, can turn into a source of income that grows far beyond your expectations. A simple skill, a service, a digital product. Everything. An online store. These can start small and expand into something meaningful. Business multiplies money because it's scalable. You can serve 10 people, then 100, then 1,000, everything, without working 1,000 times harder. The effort you put in at the start can continue paying you long after the work is done. The truth is, everything, every wealthy person, every single one, has benefited from compounding ownership or business growth in some form. No one becomes rich by accident. Everything. They become rich because they understand the long game. They understand that small, consistent actions today multiply into massive results tomorrow. Everything. They understand that time is either your greatest ally or your greatest enemy, depending on what you do with it. But let's be honest. Investing can be intimidating at first. Everything. You might worry about losing money, not knowing enough, or making mistakes. And that's okay. Every investor starts exactly where you are: uncertain, curious, and a little nervous. Everything. The key is to start small. Learn as you go. Don't try to predict the future. Don't chase trends. Focus on timeless principles: consistency, patience, diversification, everything, and long-term thinking. Remember this: you don't need a lot of money to start. You just need to start. Even small investments, done consistently, can transform your financial life. Everything. Every dollar you invest is a vote for your future. Every asset you own is a piece of security. Every step you take moves you closer to a life where you no longer worry about bills. Everything. Emergencies or the unexpected, because you've built a system that supports you. There will be moments of doubt, moments when the market dips. Everything. Moments when you'll question whether you're doing the right thing. But those are the storms that every wealth builder passes through. Everything. And the people who come out stronger are the ones who stay the course. Wealth isn't built in days. It's built in decades. It's built in silence and discipline. Everything. In the quiet decisions no one sees. Think about the version of you 10 years from now, stronger, wiser, more secure, proud of the seeds you planted today. Everything. Think about waking up one day realizing that your money is growing without you having to fight for every inch of progress. Everything. Think about the peace of mind that comes from knowing you've built something real, something lasting, something that supports your family and your future. Everything. This is the path to financial freedom, not luck, not shortcuts, not quick wins, but ownership, patience, and the simple, powerful truth that money grows when you give it time and direction. Everything. You're not just learning how to invest. You're learning how to transform your relationship with money, how to step into a life where wealth works for you, not the other way around. Everything. And once you experience that shift, once you see your money multiply, once you feel the stability it brings, everything. Once you realize that wealth is not out of reach, but something you can build one decision at a time, you'll never look at money the same way again. Everything. There comes a moment on the path to wealth when you realize that success isn't built on the big wins. It isn't the sudden breakthroughs, the lucky breaks, everything, or the rare opportunities that only some people seem to receive. The real foundation of financial freedom is something far quieter, far more consistent, and far more powerful. Everything. It's the systems you follow, the habits you commit to, and the discipline you practice even on the days when nothing exciting is happening. Everything. Wealth is less about intensity and more about consistency, and once you understand this, you stop chasing miracles and start building your blueprint. Everything. Think about any person you admire, an entrepreneur, an investor, a creator, or even a family you know who managed to rise from debt to stability. If you look closely, everything, you'll notice something interesting: their achievements didn't come from extraordinary talent. Most of them didn't start with money. Everything. What they did have was a repeatable structure for their days. their decisions, and their money. They built routines that eventually made the extraordinary feel normal. Everything. And that's what you're about to learn here. The quiet disciplines that make freedom inevitable. Let's start with a simple idea. Every day, everything, you're either moving closer to wealth or drifting further from it. There is no neutral. The small decisions you make, the coffee you buy, the hour you spend scrolling, the task you avoid, everything. The money you fail to track. These decisions compound just as powerfully as your savings do. Most people don't become broke overnight, and most people don't become wealthy overnight. Everything. Both are the result of habits repeated relentlessly. One young man once told me he didn't understand why he couldn't save money. "I work hard," he said. "I earn enough, everything. I'm just unlucky." But when we reviewed his daily routine, things became obvious. There was no tracking system. He had no spending boundaries. Everything. He bought things impulsively with the excuse that it's only a few dollars. And like many people, he believed wealth came from some future moment, some future raise, some future job, everything, some future turning point. What he didn't see was that leaking money in tiny amounts was destroying his future every single day. We built a system for him, not a strict, everything overwhelming one, just a simple structure, a weekly budget review every Sunday, automatically moving a percentage of his income into savings, everything. A rule that anytime he wanted to buy something over a certain amount, he had to wait 24 hours. And something remarkable happened. Within 6 months, everything. He had saved more than he had saved in 5 years combined. He didn't earn more, he didn't work harder, he simply became consistent. That's the magic of systems. Everything. They free you from relying on motivation. Motivation fades. Motivation is emotional, unpredictable, and inconsistent. But systems don't care how you feel. Everything. Systems work even when you don't want to. Systems guide your actions long after the excitement has worn off. The first system every future millionaire builds is the money system. Everything. And it begins with clarity. You need to know what you earn, what you spend, and what you keep. It doesn't sound glamorous, but clarity is power. Everything. Imagine driving a car with fogged-up windows. You can move forward but not confidently. Many people live exactly like that financially. They're driving blind. Everything. When you clear the fog by tracking your numbers, suddenly everything becomes visible. You can see the wasted money. You can see the unnecessary expenses. Everything. You can see where opportunities are hiding, and you can make decisions confidently instead of desperately. But systems aren't only about numbers. They're also about identity. Everything. Every wealthy person, without exception, builds habits that shape who they are becoming. Small disciplines that reinforce the identity of someone who is responsible, focused, and intentional. Everything. Maybe it's waking up a little earlier so the morning doesn't feel rushed. Maybe it's committing to 30 minutes of learning every day. Everything. Maybe it's writing down goals so the mind stays aligned. When you repeat these habits, something powerful happens. You begin to trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, everything, you become unstoppable. There's a story of a woman who spent years trying to get her finances under control but could never make progress. Everything. She wasn't irresponsible. She was simply overwhelmed. Every time she tried to change everything at once, she burned out and quit. So she tried a new approach. She chose one habit, everything, writing down every purchase she made. That was it. Just awareness. After 30 days, she added a second habit, moving 10% of her income into a separate account. After 60 days, everything. She added one more, reading about investing for 15 minutes a day. In a year, she had transformed her life. She didn't overwhelm herself. Everything. She built a blueprint that grew stronger with every small step. Most people fail not because they lack ability, but because they try to build everything in one day. Everything. Your blueprint doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be repeatable. A small win repeated consistently is far more powerful than a big win repeated rarely. And the beautiful thing is, everything. Once your systems are in place, your habits begin to run on autopilot. You no longer need to convince yourself to save. You no longer need to force yourself to learn. Everything. You no longer need to push yourself to stay disciplined. You become the kind of person who does these things naturally. Everything. Another essential part of the wealth blueprint is the environment you create. Your environment influences your habits more than your willpower does. If your home, your workspace, everything, your social circle, and your routines support your goals, success becomes easier. If they conflict with your goals, success becomes a constant struggle. Everything. Someone who wants to save money but spends every evening scrolling through online stores is fighting an unnecessary battle. Everything. Someone who wants to grow financially but only spends time with people who complain about money is being dragged backward. Everything. The wealthy create environments that nudge them toward good decisions. They automate their savings so discipline isn't required. They follow routines that reduce chaos and increase clarity. Everything. They remove temptations instead of trying to fight them. They surround themselves with people who talk about opportunities instead of obstacles. When your environment supports your habits, everything, your success becomes predictable. And then there's the habit of learning. The world is changing too quickly for anyone to rely on what they learned years ago. New skills, new tools, everything. New opportunities. These are the engines of financial growth. A person committed to long-term wealth treats learning as a daily ritual. They learn about money, yes, everything, but also about themselves. They learn how to think better, decide better, communicate better, and handle challenges with more composure. Every new skill becomes an investment. Everything. Every piece of knowledge becomes a tool. And over time, the value of what they know becomes greater than the value of what they own. But the real secret to long-term freedom is this: everything. Wealthy people build habits that make them emotionally steady. When you're emotionally unstable, every challenge feels like a crisis. Every setback feels like failure. Everything. Every delay feels like a sign you're doing something wrong. But when your habits ground you, you stop reacting and start responding. You stop panicking and start planning. Everything. You stop chasing shortcuts and start trusting the process. Emotional discipline is a form of wealth on its own because it keeps you moving when others would quit. Everything. Imagine waking up each day knowing exactly what steps move you forward financially. Imagine having routines that keep you focused even when life feels chaotic. Everything. Imagine having systems that quietly multiply your money in the background. Imagine becoming the kind of person who doesn't just dream about success, everything, but lives in a way that makes success unavoidable. That is what a wealth blueprint gives you. It transforms your goals from wishes into processes. Everything. It shifts your growth from random to inevitable. It turns you from someone who hopes into someone who executes. And once you've built these systems, something incredible happens. Everything. You stop being controlled by your environment and start shaping it. You stop being influenced by your past and start designing your future. Everything. You stop living on autopilot and start living on purpose. Every habit adds a brick. Every system lays a foundation. Every day of consistency makes the blueprint stronger. Everything. And before you know it, you're no longer chasing wealth. You're becoming the person who naturally creates it. You become a force that doesn't need to rush, doesn't need to fear everything, and doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. Because your habits speak for you, your routines carry you, your systems build for you, and your future, slowly and silently, everything begins to rise right beneath your feet.